going on, y'all? It's your boy Gibbons here.
We'll see.
Welcome to yet another episode of the Achromous Podcast, episode 78. If you are listening, that means you're probably listening on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you can actually hear a podcast. If you're watching, most likely you're looking at us on YouTube. Here's exactly what I want you to do. If you have not done so already, I need you to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell. So the next time you hop on YouTube, one of the first videos you'll see in your feed is, of course, episode 78 of the Achromous Podcast. And ladies and gentlemen, most of all,
it's free to do each one of those things that Jay just asked so kindly of you to do. I'm going to add one more thing to that. Can you also make sure to share it with people that you love, people that you feel like they can grow and appreciate these gems that we're handing out each and every week to you? Each one teach one is what we say. So we're really depending on you to help us grow and flourish the messages that we're trying to get out to you and everyone else. We really appreciate that, guys. So like it, subscribe, turn on that notification bell, and then remember to share the content from this so you be the first to get it. And you also have the privilege and pleasure of sharing it with the rest of the world.
Absolutely. We'll see. I mean, it's 78 weeks straight that we've been doing this, and I still can't get over the fact that these gems that we're putting out here are without any cost. The only thing that we ask is that you share, as Will C said, what we're doing. There are many people out there that are looking for gems like this, and they aren't able to find them, at least not the way we're putting them out. So as long as you keep pushing this up, as long as you keep sharing this, and we keep spreading the good word of what goal setting and habit building can do to a person, or do to people, or do to a community, we will be in a much better place. So once again, we want to thank you for joining us this Sunday on the Achromous Podcast, or whatever week you're listening to this particular episode. What a week it has been. We always start off this way, and as we take a look back to last week when we talked about 3 big reasons why growth is important for your future, I gotta say I've taken heed to at least one of those, especially when I'm going into the gym. It's really focus. It's really being accountable of not just what I'm doing inside the gym, but outside of it. I think a lot of people are now focused on going back to the gym. I could see it because I'm in there, and there are hundreds of new people that are in there, which is great. I'm glad that people are finding their fitness center and are really getting their fitness on. But man, I got to tell you what, I kind of like it better when it's a little bit more empty, because I can actually get on a machine instead of waiting in line to use some of it. But I digress. If you are going to the gym, congrats. I would say, especially if you're getting into this fitness lifestyle, the most important yet underrated fact of being healthy is what you're eating. So make sure that even if you're in the gym and you're lifting, you're hitting your cardio, you're doing whatever you are doing, make sure that once you get home, once you leave, that you're not going back to those old habits that you once ventured through. Make sure that you're getting the adequate amount of protein. Make sure that all of your macros are actually in line. Make sure that you're watching your calories if you're trying to lose or gain weight. Make sure you're watching all of those in order to continue to go towards that milestone, or to go towards the purpose that you are serving on this planet. We'll see. I've had quite the week. It's been a tiring one, but I'm glad once again to be here, man. Another growth session.
Hey, you know what? Each week we say the same thing, that the message that's being delivered out for the week, it really ties into our personal lives. It's so much, and it's unintentional. It just kind of always falls in that way. So I'd say if I had to add on anything to what Jay just mentioned, is just practicality, and understand, life events and things happen where you kind of get swayed or distracted rather. But it's so important that you have your mindset discipline, so that you can stay the course. When you start noticing that you're kind of falling off a little bit, or you may be eating something that you probably know that you're going to be feeling like the next day or two that's going to kind of throw you off. It's just really important to just be mindful to be kind to yourself, but be accountable as well, so that you can get back on track and get yourself to where you need to be. I know personally, I've had a lot of distractions this week, a lot of things that were urgent that just kind of took more front center over anything else I had in my life. So it had to be addressed for what they were. but my mind is still like on the par in the course. Okay, well, Will, you got to do this, do that, but don't you lose sight of what you need to do for you and things that's about your health and what we're talking about in this case being fitness. Just making sure to give that a little bit of time to work out, even when it's like, okay, I feel like I have no time or I have no energy because I'm so drained from everything else I've been putting into. But at the end of the day, I got to remind myself, like, I hope you all are doing that. It's for me, just like it's for you. So I think that's just a little cherry on top to just add to what Jay mentioned and how it's been for the week and just kicking us as we get ready to start into a new venture this upcoming week.
Absolutely, we'll see. And a lot of people have been starting new ventures. If you have not been out there, if you've been living under a rock, then you would have missed the fact that we have been and probably still kind of are in a pandemic. This pandemic has changed the world in so many different ways. And on this episode of the Achromous Podcast, we're really going to touch on how mass resignation through all different walks of life, whether you were in the workplace, you had a workplace to go to, or you're an entrepreneur and you decided you had to switch or do a complete career 180 because of where things have gone or what has happened since then. We, at least here on the Achromous Podcast, we would say that goal setting in general has changed. As a personal story, there are a lot of people out there who, even if they didn't switch jobs, there was a point where you couldn't go into an office, you couldn't go into a building, even if you had a mask, or, this is before there was vaccinations around, you had to stay put. And fortunate for myself, I know you as well, Will C, and I'm sure millions of others around, not just this country, but the world, you have internet access and you were able to get some type of loaner laptop or a work laptop that you have, and you were able to use it and work from home, which this opened up an entirely different way of getting things done, of being productive. It ended up proving to corporations or bosses or whomever that work can be done at home. You can still be productive, if not more productive, because of the cut down that you have on distractions from things that may be happening around the office or the drive home. I mean, me personally, a one-way drive for me right now, it's about an hour and a half, but way before COVID, it used to be 2 hours one way. And that of course takes away productivity time when you're at work. But just different ways in general, life has changed. And going into the topic of how this relates to goal setting is that I found that a lot of people, even before they changed their careers or they changed what they were doing, they didn't necessarily enjoy what they were doing. They maybe didn't like where they were working. They didn't like what they were doing. They didn't find passion in what they were doing. They didn't find purpose. They couldn't find fulfillment in their daily activities. And I would say that this mass resignation that has happened over the past couple of years now has changed goal setting because it forced a lot of people out of situations that they did not like. In fact, it pushed people to the brink in many various situations, even if it had to do with fitness. But on the work side of things, there are people who had to, for example, update their resumes. There are people who may have had to take courses that they weren't necessarily either they didn't take before or they hadn't thought of taking before, but because of a completely different market that has opened up, because of salary increases, because of the leverage that now employees have over their employers, a lot of things have changed, we'll see. And what I've seen in terms of the goal setting side of things is that goals have accelerated. I know before that a lot of people may have put a specific date on some of the goals that they were trying to achieve. But of course, being tossed into this pandemic has changed the outlook of your life and my life and many people in our community's lives, to be able to understand that there is a way out, right? There is a way that you can change your future by altering your present, even though our present situations were altered by something that we never knew would happen and something that was completely out of our control. it allowed employees or people who are in business to look at the world in a different way, to understand, number one, your health is priority, right? Because of what this pandemic has done to many of our families, what it has done to society in general. I can tell you, especially from the construction side, a lot of homes, a lot of people who are living in homes are much more focused on living a healthy life, whether it's what they eat, like we mentioned earlier in this podcast episode, or how they are working out at home. We'll see. When the gym was closed, I was upstairs boxing. I know you still box in your dungeon, in your the
Yeah.
place where you fortify steel, man. I still see you doing it, and I'm doing it as well. I still have an exercise bike here next to me. So what it has done as well, that we didn't necessarily see that it would happen, is that it allowed us to have more time, and a lot of people did not know what to do with the time that they had. So when it came to goal setting, I think a lot of people had to face facts that, okay, I was not in a position to make a move. I was not in a position to change what I wanted to do, but now I do not have an excuse. There have been markets that are now open up. There are jobs that are plentiful. They're readily available. And times have changed in general. And honestly, I don't see our lives going back to the way they were back in early or late 2019 before this all happened. So I would say to those who are now looking at their life differently because they were able to reach their goals at a much higher clip than they thought was possible. I want you to understand how possible change is for you. It didn't need to take a pandemic for you to get out of the situation that you did not want to be in. It took, for you, it typically takes focus. it takes it takes the ability to look within yourself and understand that you need to get to your purpose before life ends for you, honestly. And I think this pandemic has forced a lot of people to look themselves in the eye, to take advantage of specific situations, to get out of situations that they were in, and to change their lives for the better. We'll see.
Um, yeah, it really changed everything. It's such a historical event in time. Uh, to be honest, something in quite a way that I honestly, when you look back, I don't feel as though we had received an impact as significant in our lifetime for everyone globally of a change that it was brought front and center. It was swift, and it required you to pay attention because the world essentially stopped. Life as we knew it is no longer the same in how we operate, where we really rely more heavily in the technical, logical world that everything we do, you really have to put thought into it now. It had a lot of pros and cons for different folks, depending on how you are. I feel like in my line of work, Jay, in the software industry, um, you deal with a lot of people who tend to be more introverted, at least in my experience. And in some ways, being in a position for like with my company and being able to work remote, it took an adjustment because when you're used to dealing and interfacing with people all the time, and then you go from that to just kind of being by yourself, and then you kind of realize that you do have more flexibility. You have more time on your hands, and as you mentioned and you put wonderfully, Jay, a lot of times people didn't know what to do with that time. They didn't know how to reinvest into themselves, reinvent themselves, to adjust and change with the time, because that's what happened. Because we are truly in a new time period where it opened up an opportunity for career paths to be changed and adjusted, for relationships to be reevaluated of all kinds, and more importantly, for me, the biggest factor of it was it gave an opportunity for the world to stop so we can reflect on ourselves, see where we are in life, see where we want to go, see what we want to do, see what we've accomplished. Are we happy with where we are at that point in time to now? At least in my life, that's what happened to me. It was the best thing that could have happened. at the time that it did, because I had a lot going on in my life, like everyone else. I took an opportunity, albeit some of it were forced, but to reflect on myself and to make the necessary changes that I needed to make to survive and to thrive, if anything, in a time that was just full of uncertainties. I feel like a lot of people feel that way, but if you really look at it to then to now, pat yourself in the back, because you're still here. There's a lot of people who unfortunately rested their essence, and whatever your beliefs are for them, where they could not deal with the transitions of life and events that happened, because it was really that impactful. Albeit make comparison to even the Great Depression, it was an era in our time in history where we're living through it. We're still living through it now. So it's just something to really take a moment to stop, to reflect, and realize the opportunity at hand right now, to really take advantage and make a change for you, and adjust what's happening now with the times. Where again, a lot of everything is digital, so you have to become a little bit more technologically savvy. You have to make sure that you can communicate with folks. Because think of it now. I'll say this. I'll share this. And Jay, I believe you may have done this as well. Where I give interviews with people. Right. I interview a lot of people who want to come onto my job, and it's interesting because you have to you have to be able to be as personable you can without being in person with people. So it's interesting because it's like you have to add another element to being able to showcase who you are, showcase yourself, and no different than what we're doing right now. We're conversing. We're two total different places right now.
Right.
But it's become more of a need to be more personable, and just really take a moment to learn and hone yourself, to be comfortable in a way that maybe 20 years ago would have been laughable, because essentially we're standing in front of here, I'm talking at a screen, and I'm like in a room by myself. So it's like, okay, all right, that's a little different. But we're in that type of time now, and you owe it to yourself to reflect on how you could be better for you and what impact that you can have in your life and for those around you. Because if anything, I feel like this was an opportunity to make preparations to help redefine or restructure your path in life if you weren't happy to where you were, or you realized that what was working at that point in time may have been altered. And I say that from a business perspective, because I know a lot of companies, I won't say their names, that I work with personally, that were affected. I know a lot of companies that went out of business because of it, because of the adaptability. It wasn't as sufficient for either their knowledge to what they were investing into for that part of the business that they were doing, or it wasn't enough time. So there's a lot of things that we understand, and we hope everyone out there has the same mindset of understanding that it was a blow for everyone in some way, shape, or form, but the opportunity to pick yourself up is still there. It's still here now. It's been a couple of years now. We've been post of it, and we are still in a new era, in my opinion. We're still in a new phase where we're still trying to figure this thing out. So while the world is still trying to figure it out, this is your opportunity now to kind of figure out what it is that you want for you, and the steps that you need to start taking so that you can build your portfolio of life, if you will, on this next venture. Because you don't want to be waiting another 5 years, because another 5 years, it ain't going to be what it is now. I'm pretty confident in that. So if you're not on the boat of having your priorities in check and start making those moves into what you're trying to do, or start putting your pieces on the board to shift you in the right perspective, you're going to get left behind. Yeah. And it's not going to be anything like you're used to, because I feel like we're excelling so fast, Jay, with life, like the way everything is happening, acceleration of this new venture of the world in 2020 is just something else. Yeah. And it's always something new around the corner. But the best thing I realized coming out of this was the flexibility that it allowed me to create for myself, to be able to split myself up into 5-6 different people at a time in my life. Because beforehand, we didn't have those privileges to be able to do a lot of the things we've done before. To be honest with you, thankfully, because of what transpired, that allow us to be able to do what we're doing right now, to be able to have this podcast, and be able to invest into ourselves and our brand, our business, really dedicate some time, even though it's strenuous on us now. But there was a point in time we didn't even have that time. So it was like, it opened up gateways to learn more about ourselves. It opened up gateways to learn about our purpose, redefine our path, start setting the progress and plans in motion, and executing. And that's what we've begun to do. And I think that's just a true testament of something worth sharing, so that, you're not just being talked at, you're talking with folks who are like-minded, that is doing and has been doing it prior to the COVID into 2020 transition, but really was able to bring it to fruition with our dedication and recognizing the opportunity to be impactful in our lives and to others, and to do something about it. So it is very possible. Is it easy? No, but it's not supposed to be, because anything easy worth having is not worth having at all, in my opinion.
Very true.
So I feel like it's achievable if you desire it to be, and you apply intentional execution into what you're trying to accomplish. And progression is still progression. So if it's 1% towards your goal, what you're trying to get there, you keep moving forward, as long as you don't stop. You may have hiccups in the road, you may have bumps that's going to swerve you off a little bit, but you keep yourself right back on track and straight and narrow. And that's what I was saying in the beginning of this. So it's very possible, Jay. I agree with everything you said. I feel like you were spot on the message you were delivering. And I just wanted to add those parts to it, those components, because I feel like we get so focused on in the moment of like what we're dealing with, that we're missing the bigger picture, because it's we're in the time that has never been before. That's the beautiful part of right now. We are in an era that just is so beyond advanced than any other era we've ever had, and we're just using so little of it, and we're focusing so much on the insignificant parts of this era that's not going to matter 20 years from now, that you're missing out on an opportunity to reinvest yourself, to make yourself your own empire, make yourself your own like presence, your own stamp in the world. Like it's here. Like, to do what we're doing now, we don't take it for granted, because it could be considered oversaturated in a lot of ways, but it's how you provide what you have to offer. And that took us time to really reinvest and to figure out who we are and our identity, and to be able to grow and continue to grow that. And we want the same for you. We want the same for you out there, to be able to grow and invest into yourself, to take that moment to really kind of think and assess what it is that you desire to do in your life, so that you don't feel like you missed that boat, because it's not an easy one, but we're on the ride. And we're going to keep going forward, and we want to bring as many people along as we can with us on the journey, reinvesting, reinventing, and just revisualizing where your path is in life and where you're trying to go.
Absolutely. And look, I mean, you're absolutely right. Like this particular aspect of what we do, the podcast itself, I mean, the birth was during the height of COVID. It was right in the middle of that. With so much uncertainty, we were certain that we were going to put action to what we were doing. It's not like we weren't ever going to do a podcast, but this whole thing provided an opportunity for us to take advantage of, to be able to create a different medium for us to get out there, for our community to be able to hear us, understand what we're all about, what both Will C and J.H. Gibbons personally are about, and how we connect with the brand that we are out there building. So whomever out there might be going through the same thing, if you are an entrepreneur and you are trying to determine what your next move is, just make a plan and execute. That's all there is to it. And then as you go through, you're going to learn. Look, episode 1 is 100% different than episode 78 right now, right? But we had to go through and grow through all of those episodes in order to get to this point where we are right now. We're sitting in front of a computer, on a mic, on a cam, you guys listening to us or watching us. All of this now, it comes so easy to us. We'll see. It's incredibly amazing to see how much we've grown. And it's not even just here on the podcast itself, but just outside of it too. I've seen it in my jobs, being able to hold meetings and conduct meetings and being able to interact with different people. It comes so much easier because of I would dare I say, practice that we typically get on these podcasts. Look, these are completely unscripted. So everything we're talking about is straight from what we are. It's our experience, right? Is everything we come up with as we're talking. So there isn't something that we sit here and we read. This is all raw. And the reason we want to do it like this is because that is what our community is all about. Our community matters. They know that they matter. And in order for us to bring them these type of gems each and every week, we have to make sure that we put our best foot forward and give it to them raw, so to speak. But I would say that, for those who may be stuck, or for those who don't really know what they want to do, I mean, look, the new opportunities are plentiful, right? If you are fulfilled in the job that you're doing, the 9 to 5 that you're working, that's beautiful too, right? I know a lot of people out there would knock that, especially if you're looking at YouTube and you see those ads that come up with hundreds of people saying that if you're working a 9 to 5, you're a slave, or you're a slave to your boss, or this or that. I got to tell you what, every single person who is working, whether you're an entrepreneur, you're an employee, you're working, right? If you're an entrepreneur, you're employing people who are going to work that 9 to 5. If you're working a 9 to 5, you're working with people who are also working 9 to 5s, and other people who are doing 5 to 9s, 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. So I got to say that you just are going to be working regardless of what you're doing. But I would say the most important thing is, because life is so short, because life is so fleeting, we don't know when our last day is. Live a purpose-driven life. Live a life that you feel fulfilled in. Because I'm telling you now, there is no penny or nickel or dime or dollar in the world that would be worth more than your happiness. That will be worth more than your fulfillment. That'll be worth more than the purpose you are trying to fulfill. So ensure that your happiness comes first in anything that you're doing, which is why I love what people are doing when it came to the mass resignation or the mass changeover that a lot of people have gone through. They have noticed that. They're like, look, I understand I can get the 6 figures here, but internally I'm not happy. I'm not happy with myself. I am the most unhealthy I've been in my life. I need a change, even if that means I'm going to lose $30,000 a year from this change. I know that I'm going to be happier. And I love hearing those stories from people who I either used to work with at the company I'm at now, or a previous company. I love hearing those stories because you can hear the joy in their life, you can hear it in their voice, you can see it in their face, and they just exude happiness because of the changes that they made. And it's not necessarily what they were doing before didn't fulfill them, but it's the change in environment. It's the alteration and becoming something that you've always wanted to become. I knew somebody that I was working with, and during the height of COVID, they transitioned from being a part of a sort of building industry into healthcare, right? They saw the need for that. And I applaud them for going to medical school and being able to pass those exams and being further on their journey now than they were before. And I can almost promise you that if this pandemic did not hit, they would have probably kicked that can of dreams down the road. And it would have taken 4, 5, 6 years for them to even think about making that transition again. God, I want to switch, but the money's too good. And I don't know if I'm going to find somewhere else, or it's too much of a risk. When that pandemic hits, it's saying, look, you got to make some decisions now, because there's never going to be a time like this again. So for those who are still thinking of making a transition, those who are still thinking of changing their lives, or making some other thing their purpose, you just need to act on it, right? You've planned enough. You've probably been planning since the pandemic. You're beyond the planning stage now. It is the action stage that you need to be in, right? Because you can't plan for things you can't see, for things you won't be able to experience. You don't know what's going to happen. So you need to get out there now, and you need to learn as you go. It's going to suck. There are going to be times where you got to humble yourself. There are going to be times where you got to look in the mirror. It's like, man, was this worth it? Am I doing the right thing? If you are living within your truth, if you are living within your purpose, you are doing the right thing. And don't let anybody ever tell you otherwise. Make sure that you understand exactly where you're going. Now is the absolute time to do that. Now is the absolute time to get to those goals that you've had, that you've been sitting by and you've been unsure about chasing. Chase them right now. Take action right now. Right when you're done listening to this podcast, Take 1% step toward those goals. You're not going to accomplish it overnight. You may not even accomplish it in the next 6 months, but know that a year or two down the road, you will be in a much better spot for you, not for anybody else, but for you, because you matter and you're so damn worth it.
Yeah. The last thing you want to do in a position such as that is to have regretted the time that you've spent. And when you reflect back, you're like, damn, I really could have done that
Yeah.
at that point in time, because 2 years ago, I could have been somewhere way further than where I'm at now if I had just applied my effort, if I just tried. The worst thing you could do is just regret. So live not with regret, folks. Just, do the best you can for you. Try.
Yep. Absolutely. Try, act it again. All of this is learning. And that I always say this, we'll see that is the beauty of life, right? The beauty of life is just you're constantly learning, you're constantly improving, you're working on yourself, you're working on those around you, those you love, right? The community you're building is strong because of the experience that you've had. Right. And I mean, think of anybody in your life that you know. Maybe you don't know personally. Let's think of a celebrity. Think of somebody who you saw grow from where they used to be to where they are now. Think of Drake, right? When Drake first came out, everybody was clowning him because they've never heard anything like that. They've never seen somebody like that, sound like that. And if it was somebody weaker than him, they would have called it curtains. Like, this ain't for me. The music thing is not me. I'm gonna go back to the grassy. I'm probably gonna act. I can do that too. I'll find something else. But he said, no, this is my passion. I love this. I love what I do. And now he's one of the hottest artists in the world because of that. But it took over a decade for him to get those accolades that he has now, for him to go through that mud and get to where he is now. It took experience. It took him humbling himself. It took him working on his craft. It took him taking advantage of all the opportunities he had. Yes, he has the talent, but I can tell you there are millions, if not billions, of people who have talent that never pursue their dreams. They never get to that purpose. They decide to kick it down the road, or they're influenced by others to not chase it. Don't let that be you, because life is too short. Life is fleeting. And I can guarantee you, we do not know when the next pandemic is going to come. So don't count on it to be able to elevate you towards getting your dreams done.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just that simple, folks. It really just comes down to those factors. We could put it a million ways, but it all starts back with you, accountability. And then once you realize what's happening, being willing to stop making preparations to take that next step, and then actually take that leap of faith in you. The worst thing you can do is not try. That's the worst thing you can do yourself. It's not try, because then you live with that bundle of regret. And I personally, in my point in my life, where I never want to live with that again. I'm sure we've all been through it, and I just can't do it, to me. And we don't want that for you. So if this really resonates with you, be sure to share it with someone so they can get this message too. I think it's really important.
Absolutely. And we don't only want you to share this episode, we also want you to share your story. So at this time, anybody who's listening to this podcast or watching it, here's what I want you to do. I want you to be able to build with our community. You are a part of it. Build with us. I would like to hear from you guys. We would love to hear from you guys. How has your work life, or just your life in general, changed from the pandemic? Since this pandemic started, where were you? Where are you now? Are you living a more fulfilled life? The best response that we get from this question will be featured on the next episode of the Achromous Podcast, episode 79. Ladies and gentlemen, I look, I want to thank you for joining us again. I know we are going through a tumultuous time, especially if you're living in the US, but also outside the US too. It's been a wild world the past couple months, and we want to thank you for taking the time out of all the chaos, all the craziness, and coming to hear these gems in order for you to live a more fulfilling life, living a goal-centered life, a purpose-driven and goal-oriented life. We want to thank you for stopping by on the Achromous Podcast. If this is your first time ever coming to this podcast and you're listening to it on episode 78, I want to thank you for joining us wherever you are in the world at this time. For those who have been here before, and for whatever reason you still do not know what we're about, you still do not know what our name is, Allow me to spell it out for you nice and slow.
Look at that.
Achromous. If you're listening, that means you're listening on Google Podcasts, you're listening on Apple Podcasts, maybe even Spotify. Thank you for that. If you're watching our beautiful faces, our freshly groomed beards, of course, here's what I want you to do. I want you to hit that like button on YouTube, hit that notification bell on YouTube, hit that subscribe button as well. Once you hit all those three, as well as you sharing this, here's what will happen. Our community will be better for it. The world will be better for it. And of course, you'll be able to listen to episode 78 in its entirety. And ladies and gentlemen, most of all,
one more gem to add to that, Jay. Love saying this part. It is free to do so, guys. Free to do all those wonderful things Jay just said that you can do, such as like our content, subscribe to it, turn on your notification bell, and then share it with the rest of the world because it's free to do so. So take advantage of it and hold yourself accountable today and do those things because we know that you're growing with us. We know that you appreciate the gems we drop with you, and we know that you're on your way to just living the best life you possibly can for you and loving yourself first because you know.
Amen to that, brother. And speaking of living the best life you possibly can, our guest next week, I would say, has been doing that for the past several years now. This is somebody who transitioned from where he used to be to where he is now without the help of the pandemic. So you know this guy has been killing it. You know what he's about. He's been on more than one time, and we're going to welcome him once again. Next week in the Achromous Podcast, we get to sit down with actor Kevin Saunders. Once again, we'll see what he's doing. We'll see what he's up to. And we'll try to get some gems from him, man. That's the beauty of being a part of this Achromous Podcast community. You're getting to hear from people who are still on that journey and are killing it as they're making it through. So I cannot wait for next week to listen to what Kevin has to say again, man.
Oh yeah, it's always a pleasure to catch up with Kevin. I mean, he is definitely an epitome of someone that is passionate and that took a chance on himself. Literally what we just went over, this is someone who pursued it prior to the epidemic, really, and just believed in himself and took a chance to just dive out there and just make his dreams a reality. And he's out there and he's making it happen. And once you see him, if you haven't had a chance to catch him in the episode previous before, you may be surprised if you see him around on some of your more favorite shows. He's been around. He's been doing his thing. So we can't wait to have you on, Kevo. Can't wait to hear the gems that you're going to be dropping, sharing with us again, and just catching them and having a good old time.
Absolutely, man. That's what it's all about. That's what we do here at the Achromous Podcast with the Achromous community. We want to thank you once again for joining us this Sunday or whatever day you're watching this, whatever time you're watching this. Have a great week. Have a productive week. And remember that you matter. Ladies and gentlemen, until next week, it is your boy, J.H. Gibbons here.
And we'll see.
Peace.